Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Hard Truth. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Labor Day to all my fellow Americans. I hope you're having a grand old time at a cookout or maybe just fishing on the lake. Well, coverage of the Idaho 4 case continues, and in this episode, I want to talk about a continuing cycle of rejection from the professional law enforcement community that has plagued Brian Kohberger since 2010 or 2011. I want to discuss Bethany's evidence, and lastly, I want to talk about the latest HT survey results concerning the DNA for the case. All right, so grab that coffee or a nice cup of tea as we begin our story. We already know that Kohberger has aspired to be a part of the professional law enforcement community since he was a child. But we also know that for some reason there has been fierce opposition to this man achieving this dream. All right, accusations of misconduct at Monroe Career and Technical Institute resulted in his rejection from a key stepping stone to such a career. All right, now 12 to 13 years later, Kohberger's in the same hot seat. Okay, now this time he's been blindsided by more accusations, but this time the rejection is on a much grander scale. Let's look at what happened at Monroe CTI and why this curse has been following him around for so long. I want to talk about an interview given by a Carmelia Beers, who's an administrator at the Monroe CTI when Brian Kohberger was expelled from the law enforcement program. And I'm not sure how many people she talked to, but I've seen the interview across different platforms, and the information is not the same exactly. For instance, in one article, in this one, it says it was an individual that made the complaint. In the Daily Mail, it says it was a group of people. Okay? Another thing is, there's only so much information you're allowed to give about a minor. So I don't think she had the right to disclose the gender of the complainant or how many complainants there were. I think only what she was allowed to say was that he was involved in something and he was moved to another program. All right. But anyway, there are contradictions and things I don't understand about what she said. And so maybe you can please help me to understand. Okay. Let's start with this article. All right. It says an ensuing investigation took place into the incident, which Tanya Carmela Beers labeled pretty serious in an interview with the Idaho Massacre and podcast. So to start out, it's pretty serious, and the reason she's telling us that is because it probably wasn't serious. Number one, there was no police call that we know of. That he wasn't arrested. He wasn't even kicked out of the school. He was just moved to another program. And then, if I'm not mistaken, he finished that program online. So he wasn't even on the premises anymore. So the only thing that indicates that it's pretty serious is that she's saying this. All right. Now, it says she declined to elaborate because of federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act protections. Well, I think she said a little too much, but that's just my opinion. And so the investigation led to Kohberger's removal his sophomore year from the law enforcement focus at Monroe CTI, and she confirmed in a phone interview. All right. Beers, who oversaw the technical school's student mental health and discipline, reiterated that she could not divulge details of the incident. However, she said it was not drug or alcohol related, not violent in nature, nor did it involve academic integrity or cheating issues. So if it was none of those, how could it be pretty serious? The only thing left is sexual, a sexual type of, what do you say, violation. And so I'm inclined to believe that maybe she's implying that it's sexual. She's eliminating everything else. And then it says she declined to identify the number of people involved, but said that the complaint about Kohberger was not filed by a group of individuals. I've seen in other articles where it said it was a group of individuals. And so, since this is the Idaho Statesman, I would probably say that it was one person. I would say it was one person by the fact that he didn't go to jail or they didn't kick him out of the school completely. Okay? And so the podcast reported the complaint involved female students. Kohberger denied the allegation against him. She added, he was steadfast that he didn't do it. So I just feel like something's wrong here. They switched him to another program. Kohberger then switched to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning at the half-day technical school for his junior year. There were no additional incidents or complaints filed against Kohberger the next year. So it just doesn't seem to me that it was pretty serious. It sounds to me like two students couldn't get involved, couldn't get along for whatever reason, and the student he was having a problem with complained to the administration and they moved him. All right. She declined to tell the statesman about her specific interactions with Kohberger. She can't give those. The general circumstances that led to the student's removal against their preference. Ultimately, what had him removed from the program, when I look back on it now, makes sense. Why does she need to look back on it now to know what had him removed? The fact that he's been arrested and charged with a new crime has nothing to do with what happened, why he was removed. That shouldn't change or be variable based on her reflection. So to me, that's wrong. What do you think? Now, not knowing what I know, then yeah, you'd be like, I can't. I'm so shocked. In another interview, she said she was shocked, and then after she looked back, she was like, okay, it makes sense. So here she's saying after she looked back, knowing what she knows now about the case. So I think this is very prejudicial. She's mixing in what's going on now in Moscow with what happened in Pennsylvania. These are two totally separate occurrences. I mean, they're not mutually inclusive or whatever. So I think this is wrong to say, now that I'm looking back, now that I know what's happening with here, it makes sense. I think that's totally irresponsible for her to say that about this man. And this is not a pro Kohberger rant because I'm for the facts. And so, you know, I'm not being prejudicial or pro Kohberger. I'm saying for somebody to say, knowing what I know about somebody now that's sitting in jail, I can look back and say that what he did back then, it makes sense. I think that's wrong to say that. I think it's prejudicial. I think pretty much you can't trust it. It's not right. Is what I'm saying. Now, they're showing a picture of him where he clearly wanted to be a law enforcement officer. And I just feel that it's very unfortunate that this lady who was in authority at that institution will come out and make a public statement like that that's totally unjustified and really just inappropriate. All right. But Beers recalling that pursuing law enforcement was Kohberger's dream, and he stood out as an exceptional applicant for the highly competitive program. So here it's totally contradictory. She's saying, knowing what she knew then and now, it made sense. But now she's saying he was an exceptional applicant. It was competitive and they chose him. I mean, so what could she have known about him other than some complaint that was made that wasn't enough to get him kicked out of the school? He was just moved to another program. He appeared to be the total package, and he was totally contradictory. Other than that incident, Brian was a very strong student, performed well, and took his program very seriously. Okay, so if that's the case, why would you move him to an air conditioning program? If the incident wasn't enough to kick him out of the school, why did you move him from one program to another? I mean, if he was having a problem with the student, to me, it was your responsibility to just make sure they got along. But just move him from something that you knew was his heart's desire a dream, to me, that's crazy. All right. What do you think about this? She said his uniform was immaculate every day. Everything about him was perfect, so to speak, everything. I mean, so if it was that clear that this man was driven to want to be a law enforcement officer or somebody in law enforcement, why would you move him to air conditioning and, HVAC or whatever you call it, just because he fell out with one of the students? I just She acknowledged in her podcast interview the impact getting kicked out of the program had on Kohberger. It probably had a lot to do with him turning to drugs. I mean, here's your dream and here's your stepping stone. You're on your way. And just falling out with one other person, okay? He couldn't have put his hands on her, sexual assault or whatever, or he would have been charged. So why was he moved to another program? To me, that's real salty. I mean, I just don't, I feel bad about this. The reason that I remember his application was, okay, so now it's what she remembers. This is very concrete information that can be read out of a file. So there shouldn't be any ambiguity about what you remember and what happened. Okay, this is a disclaimer because she's going off the record, and now this is what she remembered and not necessarily what happened. I mean, it's very low down as far as I'm concerned. All right, counselor just really played it up how it was all he wanted. Beers said on the podcast. So my feeling was that he was defeated, because it's the only thing he ever wanted in life, and you have it, and now that's falling through. Well, evidently he wasn't defeated because he ended up at WSU as a PhD student. I mean, and the teaching assistant. So this stepping stone fell through, but his career didn't fall through. All right. Kohberger's guidance counselor for most of high school confirmed to the statement how excited he was for the technical school's law enforcement focus. He wanted to explore that line of work as a possible career choice. Many students switch career paths. I was surprised, however, when he left MCTI in the senior year. Why would you be surprised and you changed him from something you're saying he clearly loved to something he had no knowledge or desire to be a part of? I mean, this is just ignorant. School complaint leads to investigation. Warning signs emerged after Kohberger joined the law enforcement program at the county's technical program, Beers said in the podcast interview. What warning signs? There were some circumstances that led us to believe that maybe there were going to be some difficulties in Brian's life that weren't going to contribute to him having an easy time of it. Like what? Just it wasn't going to be just ending up in the police academy kind of thing for him. It was going to be a little bit more of a challenge for him to get there. I mean, how is she qualified to say this about anybody? Because he fell out with a fellow student, which it's two sides to every story, three or four sides really. And so we don't know what either student's side of it was, other than that he denied allegations. We know something was alleged by a student and he denied it, and they moved him to another program. How does that turn into a psychological evaluation that this man is going to have challenges and that he wasn't going to just end up being a police academy kind of thing? I mean, to me, this is just devastatingly inappropriate. I think it was so ignorant to get out here and say this about somebody just because you know how many students accuse other students and teachers of things every school year? I mean, this is like one of the most common things. And if you weren't able to, stick him with it, if you didn't have enough evidence to prove that he did it, why did you move him? And then to move him is one thing, but to go and predict that he was going to have challenges in his life, you know, attributed to a serial killer or a mass murderer. To me, I think the Kohberger family, I'm not going to say they should sue. I'm just saying this is out there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to just stop reading it and go on to something else. Let's talk about what Bethany's exculpatory evidence could be since a lot of people have been asking me, how could she have exculpatory evidence, uh, you know, for Brian Kohberger if there's no connection between them? They didn't know each other. Well, it could be Bethany's statements contradict the timeline of 4 to 417 or 420. All right, think about this. In the PCA, it says DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m. We know that Maddie and Kayla were at the grub truck at 1:56. All right, but that's another discussion. In order for DM and Bethany to give an account of who was at home and where they were in the house between 2 and 4, they had to be home and they had to be awake. All right, that's just my opinion. Now, in the PCA, it says DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom. Okay, what does originally mean? Did she get up out of her bed and go get in the bed with Bethany? Okay, either she went to sleep in her room or she didn't. Now, and it says she awakened at approximately 4 a.m. So if she was sleeping, she has no idea what was going on or where everybody else was in the house between 3 and 4 because she was asleep. So she wasn't qualified to make that statement. But at least she said she went to sleep. Nowhere in the PCA does it say that Bethany stated she was asleep. All right? And again, in order for Bethany to be able to give an account of not only herself, but also where everyone else was in the house between 2 and 4, she had to be there and she had to be awake. So, in my opinion, she was awake whenever it happened, and she left out of the front door, and she left the front door open. I think if the perps were on the second and third floor, and Bethany was in her bedroom, heard everything jump off, the common sense thing to do is to get up and leave. And so the front door was hanging open till 8:30, according to several different accounts, 8:30 in the morning. So I believe Bethany just left out of the front door. Now, if that's the case, think about this. Wherever she went, they know that she was there and they know what time she was there, you know? And Ann Taylor may already have a witness that said, hey, Bethany came over here at such and such a time. She was upset. Her nerve, she had she had been through something. And so right then and there, the timeline of 4 to 420 is out the window. Because number one, there's a camera. Somebody said there was a camera behind the house and a girl was running out the door at around 2 a.m. So I think that Bethany was there. I think she was fully aware that the crime was taking place, and I think she fled out the front door, which is what I would have done. Now, the big question is, why wouldn't she call the police or tell somebody? Or maybe she did tell somebody and they didn't believe her, and they went over there to see if what she was saying was so. All right, we'll save that hypothesis for the next video. And I want to talk about one other thing, and that is the survey.